Carson Daly, who was 52 years old at the time, was sitting calmly in his dressing room, the noise of The Voice Season 27 production receding into the background. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles skyline shimmered outside the windows of the NBC studio walls. In May of 2025, Carson was getting ready for a different type of stage after spending decades in the public eye as a host of television shows such as TRL, Last Call, and The Voice. He was going to participate in a segment of the Today Show in which he would discuss his battle with mental health. It was not an easy choice to make. As a man who had built his profession on charm and poise, acknowledging vulnerability was like going into the spotlight without having a script and being completely unprepared. However, he was driven ahead by the significance of his experience as well as the opportunity to assist other people. Carson was the all-American child when he was growing up in Santa Monica. He was the class clown who played varsity golf, and he was a radio enthusiast. On the surface, his childhood appeared to be perfect. Nonetheless, a subtle discomfort was present beneath the surface. During the night, he would lie awake, his heart racing, and unable to identify the fear that was building up in his chest. After some time had passed, he would admit, "I had no way of articulating it, the anxiety." In the 1980s, there was a lack of conversation around mental health, particularly among young men. His parents, who were loving but uninformed of the situation, attributed it to nerves. Carson didn't give it much thought, instead focusing his efforts on DJing and pursuing a career in broadcasting. Carson was MTV's golden boy by the time he was in his 20s, anchoring TRL to millions of viewers every day. There were screaming crowds, pop icons, and unrelenting deadlines at the studio near Times Square, which was like a circus. Although he thrived on the chaos, he began to experience panic attacks behind the scenes. His vision was blurry, and he was convinced that he would pass out on live television while he was performing with NSYNC in 1999. He remembers gripping a microphone stand. Through it all, he would smile, his adrenaline covering up the horror, and then he would collapse inside his flat, tired. "I initially believed that it was just the job," he explains. "Very high stakes, very high pressure. Until today, I was unaware that it was a condition." The 2000s brought more success, such as Last Call, The Voice, and Today, but they also brought additional triggers. Being a father, although bringing him joy, also magnified his concerns. Carson was plagued with what-ifs after the birth of his first kid, Jackson, in 2009. He would check the crib over and over again, unable to stop himself. Both his stepfather, who passed away from cancer in 2011, and his mother, who passed away from a heart attack in 2017, shatter his veneer. Anxiety and grief were intertwined, and on one occasion, he experienced a panic attack that was very severe, which compelled him to leave the set of The Voice. It was his wife, Siri, who persuaded him to get therapy, but the stigma prevented him from doing so. He confided in her. As he puts it, "I was the guy who had everything under control. In spite of the fact that I didn't feel like a failure." At the age of 45, Carson experienced a panic attack that was so severe that he mistook it for a heart attack in 2018. This event marked the turning point in his life. At a medical facility, a physician made the diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. In his memory, he says, "It was both a relief and a shock. At long last, I was able to give it a name, but I had to confront it." After that, therapy that involved cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to reframe bothersome ideas was administered. He came to the realization that his nervousness was not a defect, but rather a brain set up to overreact to stress. Medications were also helpful, despite the fact that he struggled with the decision. He explains, "I didn't want to rely on a pill, but it was like glasses for my mind. Things got clearer." He did not want to take the pill. By the year 2025, the landscape of mental health has started to transform. Campaigns under the hashtag Mental Health Matters were particularly popular on social media, and celebrities such as Simone Biles and Ryan Reynolds helped to mainstream therapy. Inspired, Carson started sharing parts of his experience on Today, but the segment he did in May was the one in which he went into the most depth. While he was sitting opposite Hoda Kotb and the cameras were rolling, he felt the familiar anxiety begin to resurface. In an interview, he said, "I'm nervous," with a crack in his voice. "It is worth it, however, if this helps even just one person." He described his first panic attack, which occurred when he was 24 years old, the embarrassment of trying to conceal it, and the years of struggling through it. His statement, "I had no way of articulating it, the anxiety," struck a chord with the audience members who saw the video. He talked about the tools that are used in treatment, such as breathing exercises, journaling, and grounding strategies, such as coming up with 5 objects that he could see. Siri's support and the unconditional affection of his children were the 2 things that he attributed with keeping him rooted. As he spoke, his eyes sparkled with excitement. "My daughter Goldie, who is 6 years old, will ask me, 'Daddy, are you okay?' The children understand it better than we did." The response was earth-shattering. Turned on by Carson Speaks, fans, and even strangers expressing their personal experiences. One of the posts stated, "I felt seen. He's a TV star, but he's just like me," she said. Carson's inbox was flooded with letters from people of all ages, ranging from teenagers to senior citizens. The Today episode, which was live-streamed all across the world, reached 20 million views, and it trended alongside the wave of mental health awareness that occurred in 2025. Carson, however, did not let himself become a poster boy. He remained grounded. He admitted to his coworkers, "I'm not an expert. All I am is a guy trying to figure it out." It took him a long time to achieve balance in his routine. "Meditation is the first thing that I do in the morning. 10 minutes of awareness before the turmoil of today." He runs not only to improve his physical fitness, but also to calm his mind. When he is on The Voice, he is honest with the participants, many of whom are members of Generation Z, who are struggling with their own difficulties in an industry driven by TikTok. When asked about it, he responds, "I tell them it's okay to not be okay." There are also fewer late-night activities that he attends, and he spends more time with his family at their home on Long Island, where he coaches his children's soccer games. When Carson thinks back on his journey, he realizes that it was more of a marathon than a sprint. There are still times when anxiety springs up, such as during The Voice Lives, when technical issues cause stress to surge, but he is prepared. He says, "It's not about curing it," and he agrees. The key is to learn to live with it. Even though he is happy of the openness of 2025, he is aware that stigma still exists, particularly for men. He explains, "We are taught to push through difficult times. However, the true sign of strength is the ability to ask for assistance." Carson looked directly into the camera as he was wrapping up the Today segment earlier. According to what he said, "If you are struggling, you are not alone. Speak with a person. It's the most courageous thing you'll ever do." In the backstage area, Hoda gave him a hug and whispered, "You turned lives around today." When Carson smiled, the burden seemed to lighten. Although his journey was not yet ended, discussing it felt like a liberating experience.